Hey everyone, this is Jay, also known as jaynemesis from eToro, where I trade as a popular investor. This is week 30 of our 2018 eToro updates. This week saw a portfolio change of minus 0.24%, realized profit of plus 0.92%, and 26 trades were closed in total. Our top news this week: Bitcoin ETF has been denied by the SEC again. This was the second filing by the Winklevoss twins ETF. Last time it was denied because of fears about a potential market manipulation and how unregulated cryptocurrencies were at the time. And basically the same has happened again. So the price dropped from Bitcoin by around $300, $400 when the news broke, but it actually recovered really, really quickly within about 24 hours. There's still a lot more ETFs in the works by various different parties, including SolidX, which are also due to be reviewed by the SEC later in the year and into next year as well. So there's still a pretty good chance of an ETF being approved within the next year or so. I think it's still a little bit too early for an ETF at the moment, but certainly the ETF has helped the bulls return to Bitcoin, it seems. So hopefully we can keep that momentum up and see Bitcoin heading back towards that $10,000 price point. That being said, I do think that we are still likely to go back down to those 6K levels potentially one more time before we really return to the big bull market. Next up, earnings. So there were a bunch of earnings that took place throughout the week. I was really busy listening to all of the different calls, all of the Q&A sessions that take place afterwards, and of course checking the actual reports and the letters sent out to shareholders to see what was going on with the various different companies. Overall, it was a really, really good week for us in terms of trading based off of the earnings reports. So first of all, we had Microsoft and Netflix, which I think I mentioned briefly in last week's update because it was the same day as the news was coming out. But we did well on both of those. Netflix was actually down, and then we traded it well afterwards. So that wasn't the best call, but it was still good. We also had Twitter, AMD, Wix, First Solar, and a couple of others as well, including, of course, Facebook, which was the biggest one. So Facebook, I was brave enough to put on a small short just ahead of their earnings. As you may recall, I was talking quite a lot back during the privacy stuff with Facebook about my fears about them potentially starting to run out of users and users beginning to leave the platform, because I kind of got the impression that was the sentiment from users, from my friend groups and whatnot, and seeing that even I myself was using the platform less and less. It turned out that was pretty much what they showed in their earnings, and Facebook took a huge battering as a result. That actually ended up having knock-on effects on the rest of the markets, with a lot of the social media giants, especially taking a big hit, along with the Nasdaq for the most part. But we did do very well on AMD. We did okay on First Solar. I didn't really trade First Solar as a result of it, but their earnings were pretty much flat, so nothing to really worry about or celebrate there. Wix was another good earnings. They had a great earnings period, talking about some cool software that they've been working on recently to allow people to build websites entirely on a mobile device, which is pretty cool. And of course, they've seen some good growth as well. We also had Spotify. Spotify again had really, really strong growth in users. 7 million new, I think it was 7 million new paid subscribers, but don't quote me on that because I may have got those figures backwards. But yeah, overall we did very, very well. The only one that was really bad for us turned out to be Twitter. So Twitter, I think partially because of what happened to Facebook, saw a pretty sharp fall of between 10 and 15%, depending on what period you're measuring it over. And Twitter is, of course, one of the larger stocks that I hold in my portfolio. So we did take a bit of a pounding on that one, but I'm still pretty confident. I listened to the call, and it didn't seem all too alarming to me. I think most of it is fear about, especially the daily active users being affected as Twitter continues to kind of clean up their website and remove some of the bots and fake accounts, basically. Overall, pretty happy though. And as you'll see later on, there's a lot more earnings coming up. Sorry that I'm not fleshing it out too much in this video, but I will be releasing a blog post with pretty much the updates on all of them. I already actually released one about Netflix that's a bit shorter, so you can go and read that one now if you like. But I've written the stuff for Microsoft, for Spotify, and for a couple of others. I'm trying to remember which ones I've done, which ones I haven't now. But once I've written all of them, I'm just going to release it in one big blog post for that week, so you can kind of check and see my thoughts on everything that I traded during that week, with regards to earnings and my long-term vision for where those companies are going. So let's take a look at how we did on cryptos. Again, not too much trading going on at the moment. I did actually make a call that seems to have been somewhat accurate, that we would drop back down to the 7,800, 7,900 kind of base level before we kind of stabilized and hopefully stay above that all-important trend line on Bitcoin. Especially, I did do some trades on Stellar. So Stellar has had quite a bit of good news recently, a lot of cool partnerships and things going on. But yeah, based on some technicals, I managed to trade quite a few nice little trades, two trades actually, that were substantial at least, which is a gain of 5% and 14%, as you can see. Bitcoin, again, I did a couple of trades trying to trade on the move between 7,800 and 8,300-ish, and mixed results. One of them I ended up closing at basically break even. The other one I got a 4% profit from, so I'm pretty okay with that. On to the stock recap. So let's take a look at some of the actual individual trades I did around various different earnings, and of course just my general trading throughout the week. Starting off with Square. So Square's earnings are actually coming up this week. I closed a few trades up above $70. I'm looking really at I was looking, obviously I've got the hindsight of today that I'm now looking at, but I was looking to buy at anything below like 69-ish, even 70 potentially, to rebuy those two positions or even just one of them. As you'll probably find out in next week's update, there have been some pretty big moves today, so I've actually been trading it a bit more than that, more than I expected. But regardless, some pretty solid trades here closed for 2.5% and 5.5%. AMD. So AMD had an amazing earnings. It's actually their best earnings report in 7 years, which is absolutely insane. As many of you will know, I have been a big fan of AMD for the past 2 years or so, suggesting that their stock would reach the kind of prices that it has now reached, around $18, $19 even. Unfortunately, during the very, very bearish sentiment in stock markets back in January, February, I closed out quite a few positions back then. So this was pretty unfortunate. That being said, we still managed to close a few nice trades, both ahead of earnings, during earnings, and throughout earnings, and even after earnings as well. So we haven't missed the boat entirely. I still had some exposure to AMD, so I'm not too unhappy, but it certainly made me think again about sticking to my guns on stuff like this, because really they reported exactly what I suggested would happen, which is that Epic is starting to ramp up and really generate some good income for them. Nintendo. So Nintendo was just a quick buy, really. It was based off technicals only. Some pretty quick trades, 1.5%, 4.5%. It's a volatile stock to trade, but the returns are pretty good from Nintendo. So I'm quite happy with those without using any leverage as well. I also closed one trade on Nvidia for 0.24% profit. Nothing really special to talk about on that one. Likewise, Spotify, I closed 1.2% profit. I think that was after earnings. I'm pretty sure, on the same day as their earnings call, just kind of taking some profit because it seemed like the market was in a very profit-taking kind of mood. Facebook. So this is the big trade of the week, I guess. Of course, in hindsight, I wish I had done it with 100% of my portfolio and just made some nice money across the board. But unfortunately, that's not the case. I was only brave enough to do it with around 1% of my portfolio, but we did make an 18% profit in just one day, shorting Facebook ahead of their earnings. So that was a nice trade, very satisfying. Big shout out to Matty Greenspan, by the way, who actually did this on 5 times leverage on his portfolio and basically ended up with a 95% profit. So he did. He was braver than me, and he did very well out of it. Wix, 3 trades closed here for mixed profits, but one of them was 7.7%. We had a really nice earnings, as I mentioned earlier, with Wix. Some pretty good stuff. It all looks very, very healthy over there. I think they're making some very sensible investments. Again, if you want to hear more about my long-term opinion of these companies, then check out the blog post when I eventually finish it, which I say that so many times on these videos that I will release things and stuff. But yeah, it's obviously quite a bit of work, and there's a lot of earnings calls next week. So it's really kind of hoping that I can just find a bit of time to finish it off. Sony 0.8% profit. I think I sold this pretty much right at the top of a daily candle, so I'm pretty happy with that. Again, like Sony is a stock that I really, really, really like, but it seems to be a little bit flat. It doesn't seem to fluctuate very much. It's always around $50. So I'm unsure how much I'm really going to trade it. I think they've actually got their earnings coming up as well this week. So yeah, another one to look forward to. Finally, Microsoft. So Microsoft, as I think I mentioned in my last video, they had another really, really strong earnings. Actually, across the board, they had growth across every single sector of the company, which is really quite amazing because a lot of those sectors have been going backwards for a while. But regardless, they had a great earnings, and yeah, we took some profits accordingly because we had a good position in Microsoft ahead of earnings. Taking a quick look at our realized trading stats. So we have 26 trades were closed in total, 25 were profitable, and 1 was unprofitable. That was the trade on Stellar that was a small loss. Most traded was AMD with 5 trades, and our total profit was plus 0.92%. So let's take a look at our performance. As you can see, we're pretty much sitting exactly where we were before at plus 7.5% roughly for July, with just a couple of days left until we move into August. Pretty happy with that. As I've mentioned a few times, 5% is the target for each month. There is, of course, still going to be a lot of volatility to come, especially after that Facebook earnings. I would expect to potentially lose a little bit off of that before July ends and maybe end up somewhere around 7% or so. But again, this is all of my open trades. This is my portfolio value that is shown on here, fluctuating in the performance. So obviously take it with a pinch of salt because I am closing good profitable trades recently. And I think that's really what you need to be focused on when there is such volatility. That being said, very, very happy with this. Hopefully we can just keep this going for the rest of the year and end with a nice, healthy profit at the end. Looking ahead, of course, as I mentioned, we have a whole bunch of earnings. So that's pretty much what I'm focused on. I know there's been some good crypto drama and stuff going on recently, especially surrounding the ETF stuff, but there really hasn't been as much volatility there as normal. And of course, the spreads there are higher, so you need more volatility to really be able to actively trade it. So again, I'm focusing on stocks. We have a bunch more earnings coming up. We have Take-Two, Apple, Sony, Baidu, Shopify, Square, Tesla, TripAdvisor, Fitbit, Garmin, and Activision. Those are the main ones that I'm looking at. I think there's actually GoPro as well and a couple of others that I may also look to trade, but those are the big ones that I'm looking at. The key ones from that I think really warrant a lot of attention are Tesla. So Tesla's earnings will be super, super important. There's been so much criticism recently about how everything's going over there. A lot of Model 3 orders have been cancelled. Again, it's kind of expected because there's no punishment for cancelling it, and anyone could just put down $1,000 deposit and order one. So it's not too surprising to see cancellations, but again, like with the battery stuff that's been going on and some of the reports about Elon potentially shutting down a guy who's on Seeking Alpha, who's posting things about shorting Tesla, all of these kind of weird rumors and stuff circulating, it will be really, really important for Tesla to come out with a strong earnings result, which means seeing the number of cars produced way above that 5,000 mark. That's the really important bit. But we will see. I do not plan on going into that with any Tesla stocks. I currently have no positions in Tesla, and I think I'm going to keep it that way until after this earnings report. But it will obviously dictate how I go ahead trading them in the future. So very important earnings call, that one. I think that's probably the most important one of the week for us, despite the fact that I don't have any shares in it at the moment. It's something that I used to trade very, very actively, so I'll be looking forward to that. Apple is another interesting one. Apple have been doing pretty badly recently, especially like in a public opinion kind of sense. Some products that have been sent back for refunds. Like, it's just feels like they've kind of lost their edge a bit. Not that I think personally that they ever really had a massive edge, but it does feel like perhaps the innovation has slowed down there, and that the products are becoming more and more lazy. Sony is another one that could be interesting. Hopefully, they can do something because it would. I really want to trade Sony. I want to trade Sony. I'm very bullish on Sony. Actually, I think that they're doing well across the board, really, and they make a lot of stuff. So that's quite a big statement. The other two really, really important ones for us are Shopify and Square. So Shopify obviously is a major part of my portfolio. We've seen some great gains from that towards the end of 2017 and early 2018. Square has gone up by over 100% so far this year, and we've realized quite a bit of that gain. So we've been there with them on that ride. I'm pretty interested to see their cryptocurrency sales from Square. Last time it was around 36 million. And I'm really interested to see what they quote as that again this time, and if they are, going to be making any announcements on their plans with cryptocurrency, because it seems to me like that's what they're gearing up for. Other ones that could be interesting are Fitbit and Garmin. Both companies seem to have been doing pretty well on the fitness side of things recently. So, obviously Fitbit only really does fitness-based stuff, but Garmin is a bit more diversified, so they could be some interesting trades as well. Cool, well, that just about does it from me, guys. Thanks for watching. If you want to keep up with my thoughts, especially during earnings, then Twitter is definitely the best place to be doing it. I am tweeting pretty much off the back of every earnings report on my thoughts on it and where I expect things to open the following days and things like that. So if you're not following me on Twitter and you really care about this kind of stuff, then it may be worth heading onto Twitter and following me. That does it. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.